It is my pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker tonight, a friend with a strong vision for the future of education in America and in our state. Dr. Joseph Graves was appointed to the position of Secretary of Education by Governor Noem on January 3rd of 2023. He has worked in the education fields for nearly 4 decades, holding a wide range of positions, including teacher, principal, and superintendent. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Joseph Graves.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. It has been not quite 2 years since since the governor was kind enough to appoint me as Secretary of Education. And as was told you there, in the previous 30 years, I've been a school superintendent. So during that first legislative session, we were about a week and a half in, and I was walking out with the legislation, went out the back door of the Capitol, and I suddenly realized it was snowing, and I hadn't realized in this Capitol. And I just kind of looked at it for a while, and finally the legislature looked at me and said, "What?" And I said, "It's snowing, and I don't care." I've learned to love South Dakota weather again. The other thing I've really enjoyed about there's many things I've enjoyed about being Secretary of Education, but one of them has been the opportunity to meet the leaders of the K-12 systems throughout the state. I haven't met them all, but I've met a lot of them. And some of them are absolutely lost, and I count myself in that for that first year or so, kind of trying to get your bearings and everything else. And some are way off in doing these crazy things in other states. And then there's some, and there's not a lot of them, but there's some who are doing extraordinary things. They have their finger on the pulse of what is needed in education. And you're going to hear from Ryan Walters, the state superintendent from Oklahoma, a little bit. And I'm not going to talk any more about that because I don't want to tread on his introduction. I don't want to tread on his speech. But let me just say that you're in for a real treat there. As for South Dakota, we're working on a number of things right now. As you have been told, in the social studies standards are new, and they're going to go into effect the fall of 2025. Now, interestingly, the results of what we've been teaching in social studies in America for the last number of years have kind of come home to roost. And what we're seeing is there was this movement to teach the social studies without content, teaching methods and how to do things and all those kinds of things. And of course, kids need content. They need to hear about Columbus. They need to hear about George Washington. But it wasn't being done. And as a result, if you look at the gauge of the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and other factors, you were finding that we were raising kids who had no sense of American history and no idea how the government worked. Now, if you happen to be living in North Korea, that doesn't matter. You don't have to know how the government works because nobody wants your opinion anyway. But in America, we still are conducting a wonderful experiment in free government. And we were losing that. And it was thanks to Governor Noem, who sat down and said, "No, I'm going to shock the whole system. I'm going to stop this right here and right now. We're not going to teach this way anymore. I'm going to interrupt the standards." And she brought in a whole new set of standards. And the state board, we've got 2 state board members here today, Rich Meyer, the vice president, Linda Olson, one of our board members, who sat down and said, "You know what, yeah, we're gonna bear the brunt of this." And people came to our BOES meetings and screamed at us for 4 straight meetings. And they were furious with us, and there's still people very furious with us about that. But we got the standards we've needed, and we spent the last year and a half figuring out how to teach that. And that's going to happen now, and we're going to get those standards back. We're also restoring the science of reading. Now, many people think the science of reading is a brand new thing. It's not. It's how we used to teach reading. I still remember it, but barely. We replaced science of reading with whole language. And when whole language was proven to be an absolute disaster, they came back and said, well, let's do balanced literacy, which was also a disaster. And now we're back to phonics. Phonics is how you teach reading. Prior to this, we were trying to teach kids reading by showing them a picture of a monkey and then saying, see, there's the word, and you'd know that word because you look at the picture. And that was supposed to be how you taught reading. Or you had context clues instead of decoding, which is, of course, how you teach reading. We're back to that now, so that's been a real benefit. And that's going to be happening here. We're doing a number of things to make sure that that happens. The state legislature was good enough to give us $600,000 to make that happen, and we're training our teachers now in that as we have been the last couple of years. And thankfully, we're now also going to be bringing that into the Board of Education, to the Board of Regents, who are now going to be teaching all new candidates that. So as we're teaching our current teachers, they're going to be teaching our new teachers, and we're going to have science reading back in place. The third initiative we're working on right now is called South Dakota Sturdy. South Dakota Sturdy is a resilience curriculum. It's a set of 10 lessons, so it's not a huge thing. We've written them all in the Department of Education, and it's designed to say, here are some examples of people who are deeply connected to South Dakota. In 2 cases, not even people, they're 2 animals, and one's even a building, the Corn Palace. And we're trying to teach the kids lessons through these individuals with deep South Dakota ties in how to be resilient. And so we're going to have a lesson on Joe Foss. And we're saying, you know what? Joe Foss succeeded because Joe Foss dared. Because when things were tough, he went out and took the risk. Or we're going back to Teddy Roosevelt and saying, you know what, you can make yourself into who you want to be. You don't have to be Little Lord Fauntleroy, which is how Teddy Roosevelt was being raised till one time he said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to be my own man. And he became that, and he did a lot of that here in the Dakota Territory. And we're going to do Laura Ingalls Wilder. We're going to show how the long, cold winter that she spent out here and how she endured that and made herself into something and became a renowned author, still selling millions of books every year. All of those individuals, again, have South Dakota ties. We're going to be offering that. Last Friday, we met with the School Counselors Conference here it was up in Brookings, and we showed them those lessons, and we're going to hoping those lessons are going to find them in their way into the classroom so that those kids are doing that. That's what we're up to. With that, I'm going to end, and what I do want to say is to all of you and to Family Voices, thank you very much. It's been a treat to be here tonight. Thank you.